Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are our top stories today. Houthi terrorists still capable of significant attacks despite U.S. bombardment. The threat to shipping sees civilian crews abandoning ship and downing multi-million-dollar U.S. drones. A retired Navy captain on the solution.
The U.S. and Russia set to deliver arguments today as the top UN court hears arguments over Israel's territorial claims. And more on the U.S. veto of a security resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
The former FBI informant charged with falsely accusing the president and his son of corruption allegedly got his information from Russian intelligence. That's according to prosecutors. The details of a new court filing.
Illegal immigrant minors accused of heinous crimes like murder and brutal assault. The House Judiciary Committee is demanding their case files, but the Department of Health and Human Services is citing privacy concerns.
Unborn children are children, including frozen embryos. That's what the Alabama Supreme Court has ruled. How a break-in at a fertility clinic prompted the case.
Capital One's $35 billion deal to buy Discover would create the largest U.S. credit card company by loan volume. What this means for your wallet with the host of NTD Business.
And keeping your brain engaged with music could help prevent mental decline. How playing an instrument or singing can benefit brain health.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 21st.
Yeah, middle of the week. And you know, Evelyn, that Houthi strike on the British registered cargo ship in the Red Sea was the most damaging attack of theirs since they started.
Right, and the Houthi did say that the ship sank.
Yeah, and according to the UK government, the ship was taking on water, but the Royal Navy says they don't have any evidence of it actually sinking.
Yeah, that's right. So the UK really condemned the attack, saying that it was absolutely unacceptable and that the allies now, they and their allies now have the right to respond. So that is part of today's top news. The Pentagon has acknowledged after a month of U.S.-led airstrikes, the Houthi terrorist group in Yemen is still capable of launching significant attacks.
This week, the terror group damaged a ship that's now in danger of sinking on a critical shipping route in the Red Sea and shot down a U.S. drone worth tens of millions of dollars. Here's the Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary yesterday.
Initial indications are that it was shot down by a Houthi surface-to-air missile. In terms of recovery options, I know CENTCOM is looking into that, but I don't believe it has been recovered at this time. Their attacks are getting more sophisticated. That was the first time, as CENTCOM put out, I think it was on Saturday, that the first time that they used an underwater unmanned vehicle to try and launch an attack. So absolutely, the attacks are sophisticated, their weapons are sophisticated, and we know where they're coming from. We know that Iran is continuing to supply them.
U.S. Central Command says it shot down 10 bomb-carrying Houthi drones and a cruise missile so far this week. The military says it also hit a Houthi surface-to-air missile launcher and a drone ready to be launched.
The Pentagon says coalition strikes are having an impact, but that the Houthis still have a very large inventory and are going to continue to use it. And for an assessment of the Houthi threat and the U.S. countermeasures, we bring in Captain James Fennell, a former director of intelligence for the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Captain Fennell, really appreciate your time. With the crew of the UK-registered Ruby Mar abandoning ship after the Houthi missile attack, what does the U.S. need to do to get this situation under control and thwart these terrorists?
Well, good morning, and thanks for the invite. This is a very dangerous situation that's been going on for some time, as your news show just pointed out. And we're now at a significant point where the 20-nation Operation Prosperity Guardian that the United States has put together is trying to keep the Red Sea open and the Suez Canal open so that the world's goods can continue to flow from Europe to Asia and to America. And the attacks are increasing in complexity and scale. We had on the 27th of January, the USS Carney shot down what is believed to be the first time an anti-ship ballistic missile that was fired by the Houthis. And so the spokesman from the Pentagon was correct. We know where this is coming from. It's coming from Iran. And so we need to start thinking about what do we do to put pressure on Iran and other sources that are providing even Iran funding and technology like China that are being used by the Houthis. Because if we continue to try to defend each ship one missile at a time, somebody's going to make a mistake at some point, and one of these missiles is going to get through. And some of these ballistic missiles that the Houthis have ranges from 140 to 500 kilometers with a warhead of 300 kilometers, which could sink a U.S. Navy warship and kill a crew of, say, 300-400 people. And so we don't want that to happen. We don't want it to happen to commercial vessels because it's the lifeblood of everybody's economy, and that's devastating as well. So we have to do something different. And just trying to find Houthi rebels in the desert that are, being supported by the government of Yemen, being supported by Iran, we need to escalate our pressure campaign. And I'm not suggesting necessarily direct strikes on Iran right now, but that should be in the cards. We should have target lists to tell us where Iranian munitions are. And then we need to start working on their economic sanctions and things of that nature that could put pressure on them to stop what they're doing. But right now, it doesn't look like we're being very effective. And this is going to have a really significant impact on people's lives, if not economically, but it could really have some impact on lives of U.S. Navy sailors.
That is such a good point you make here, and a huge risk. I mean, the Houthis have attacked at least 45 ships so far, and this is jeopardizing about 15% of global maritime trade. The Houthis just shot down another $30 million MQ-9 Reaper drone, and they showed photos of it. The Houthis did that media handout. Is the U.S. using weaponry effectively in its operations against the Iran-backed group?
I think we're using what we have that's available, and our sailors, I mean, you have to give them huge credit. They've been operating there, since 7 October, but when these attacks over the last 2 months, they've been defending against every kind of weapon, anti-ship cruise missiles that are going, almost, twice, 2 or 3 times the speed of sound, these anti-ship ballistic missiles that are 5 times the speed of sound. They're going against unmanned underwater vehicles that we heard about, these drones that they're using, the Houthis are using. So we're being attacked on all fronts. And our guys are doing a great job, but we need to do something more, and escalating this to put pressure on them to stop is what we need to do. Or we're going to have a massive bombing campaign in Yemen, and I'm not sure the world's ready for another one of those.
Well, thank you so much for your analysis on this, Captain James Fennell, former Director of Intelligence for the U.S. Pacific Fleet.
Thank you.
The U.S. proposed a United Nations Security Council draft resolution yesterday calling for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza.
The draft resolution calls for the release of all hostages and warns against an Israeli ground offensive into Rafah. The draft says that would result in further harm to civilians and have serious implications for regional peace and security.
And meanwhile, the United Nations top court is hearing arguments from over 50 countries over Israel's territorial claims on disputed land sought for a Palestinian state. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the latest in the Israel-Hamas war.
6 days of hearings at The Hague are underway over the legality of Israel's territorial claims. The case focuses on Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank. The U.S. and Russia present arguments Wednesday, along with Egypt and France. Israel captured the area from Jordan and Egypt in the 1967 war. Palestinians want all three for an independent state. Israel considers the West Bank to be disputed territory, to be decided in negotiations. The Jewish state will not speak in this week's hearings, but stated the court's involvement could be harmful to negotiating a settlement. Washington in 2022 opposed the court issuing an opinion on the matter and is expected to argue it cannot rule. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu Tuesday stated Israel is not prepared to pay any price in a deal to free hostages, and certainly not the delusional prices Hamas demands. He declared Israel is committed to continuing the war until it achieves all of its goals, eliminating Hamas, releasing all hostages, and ensuring that Gaza never threatens Israel again.
There is no pressure, none, that can change this.
The U.S. on Tuesday vetoed a United Nations resolution that demanded an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The vote in the 15-member Security Council was 13-1. The UK abstained. That marks the third U.S. veto of a Security Council resolution on a ceasefire demand. NSC spokesman John Kirby explained the U.S. position after the vote.
We just weren't able to support a resolution today that was going to put sensitive negotiations in peril. And that's what we believe this resolution would do.
Kirby says Middle East envoy Brett McGurk will visit Egypt Wednesday and be in Israel Thursday. That's for ongoing talks with Qatar on a temporary ceasefire hostage release deal. Over 100 hostages are still being held by Hamas after the terrorist group abducted over 250 people in its October 7th attack on Israel. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
President Biden told reporters yesterday he intends to impose new major sanctions on Russia.
I told you we'd be announcing sanctions on Russia. We'll have a major package announced on Friday.
The White House said the new sanctions are to hold Russia accountable for the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny and the war in Ukraine. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said yesterday the sanctions package will cover elements of the Russian defense industrial base and revenue sources for the Russian economy. The Kremlin has denied involvement in Navalny's death. And President Biden took issue with former President Trump's response to Alexei Navalny's death.
The president wants Trump to condemn and hold Russian President Vladimir Putin accountable. Here's Biden's message posted to X.
After Putin's most fierce opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, died in a Russian prison last week, the former president, Trump, and other Republicans refused to hold Putin accountable for his death. Instead, Trump said Navalny's death made him realize how bad America is. He said, and I quote, "We are a nation in decline, a failing nation," end of quote. Why does Trump always blame America? Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. Why can't Trump just say that?
Biden was referencing a post by Trump where the former president said Navalny's sudden death made him more aware of what's happening in the U.S. Trump called it a slow, steady progression.
Two anonymous sources told CNN that Biden has personally directed senior campaign aides to focus on highlighting any of Trump's comments that they view as inflammatory.
Presidential candidate Nikki Haley also chimed in, criticizing her GOP rival for not condemning Putin as, in her own words, a murderous thug. Trump last night told Fox News he thinks Navalny was very brave, but should not have gone back to Russia. He says the U.S. is turning into a communist country, referencing his indictments. The lead GOP candidate says it's all because he's in politics. And a former FBI informant who made corruption claims about President Biden and Hunter Biden said he got information from officials associated with Russian intelligence. That's according to a court filing by prosecutors yesterday.
NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the case against Alexander Smirnov.
Prosecutors in a court filing Tuesday said former FBI informant Alexander Smirnov claimed to have extensive and extremely recent contacts with Russian spies. They say he admitted officials associated with Russian intelligence were involved in passing a story about Hunter Biden, and that Smirnov had planned to meet with one official during an upcoming overseas trip. But prosecutors with special counsel David Weiss's team did not reveal which story about Hunter Biden Smirnov allegedly got from the individuals. Smirnov is accused of falsely telling his handler that a Ukrainian energy company paid Hunter and Joe Biden $5 million each around 2015. This claim became central to the Republican impeachment inquiry against the president in Congress. He allegedly told the FBI in September that Hunter Biden was making phone calls in a hotel that was bugged in Kyiv, Ukraine. He says Russian intelligence officers would use the hotel to gather compromising information. Federal agents have rejected this claim. The court paper stated evidence against Smirnov was strong. Prosecutors have requested Smirnov, a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen, be detained until trial, arguing he can get a new passport from the Israeli embassy and leave the country. For now, a judge has allowed Smirnov to be released on electric monitoring. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
A Tuesday Supreme Court decision could shift the paradigm for students across the nation. Academic performance is no longer the main factor in determining who can attend one of the nation's most prestigious public schools, Virginia's Thomas Jefferson High School. NTD's Melina Wisecup has the story.
Just months after the Supreme Court overhauled race-based admissions at Harvard University, it's now allowing a race-related policy at Virginia-based Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, one of the nation's highest-ranked public schools. The High Court declined to rule on a newly enacted holistic admissions policy, which scraps who has the highest test scores and instead favors applicants who are either economically disadvantaged or who are learning English as a second language, a policy that some parents have said discriminates against Asian Americans.
This is not only a discrimination against Asian Americans, that endanger our nation's technology leadership in the world by worsening our shortage in STEM education.
Since the policy was enacted in 2020, the elite science and tech school dropped in its ranking from number 1 to number 5. The demographics changed too, the Asian population dropping from 73% to 54%, the number of black students increasing from 1 to 7%, and Hispanics rising from 3% to 11%.
That tries to adjust for low-income zip codes, low-income neighborhoods, that claims it's racially, facially neutral, but actually is discriminatory. It seems to stray a little bit from the ruling, or at least significantly weaken their ruling in the Students for Fair Admissions case.
The performance of the black Hispanic is not as good as other racial groups. They should address that, address the root cause.
Two justices predicted ripple effects from leaving the policy in place. In their dissent opinion, Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas wrote, TJ's model itself has been trumpeted to potential replicators as a blueprint for evading the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Coming up next, a bankruptcy judge is allowing Rudy Giuliani to fight the $148 million verdict in his defamation case as long as someone else pays for his legal bills.
New York Attorney General Letitia James threatening to go after former President Trump's buildings if he can't pay his $355 million civil fraud fine.
Is Governor Gavin Newsom Plan B for Democrats? What President Biden says as he heads to California, and how former President Trump's responding to Nikki Haley's refusal to quit.
We've been spending a lot more time than ever at home these days. So maybe now you've just noticed cold air coming in from a couple windows, or that your patio door isn't closing fully, which means you're losing heat in the winter, losing cooling in the summer, losing money all year long. And that means now is the time for new windows and patio doors from Renewal by Andersen. Most installations are usually done in just one day. Renewal by Andersen windows and doors can help lower your heating bills and air conditioning bills with their most energy efficient glass available. Only their windows are made with Fibrex material, proven to be 2 times stronger than vinyl. And they're backed by a 20-year warranty. And right now, when you buy one window or patio door, get one at 40% off. Plus, there's no money down, no payments for 12 months, and no interest for 12 months. Plus, an additional $200 off your entire purchase.
1-800-218-1510.
Ancient Scandinavians, often referred to as the Vikings, might not have been so simple and barbaric as they've been portrayed for the last decades. In order to understand the Vikings on a deeper level, we need to take a closer look at their original belief system, their earliest ethical principles and worldview, which are revealed in the myths, stories, and prophecies of their times. In many of the Viking stories, we learn about the dangers of corruption of the human soul. And all this ties into how and why the world and humankind eventually degenerates, leading up to the end times and the last battle between good and evil. In this episode, we're going to take a look into the inner world of the ancient Scandinavians and get acquainted with 2 of their most central tales that reveal their guiding principles for humankind, both for themselves as well as for mankind in modern times.
All right, I'm at the house, and I'm gonna head inside. Okay, come on, this door. I'm in the house.
What do you see?
Let me check the den. There's nothing in the den. Let me check the kitchen. There's no one downstairs, it looks like.
Wait, what was that?
I don't know. Let me head upstairs.
What do you see?
you shut this bathroom door?
No.
Oh,
What?
It's not here.
What do you mean?
The gun's not here.
What? Where is it?
Oh my God.
What's going on?
Cam.
Oh my God, what's going
Cameron, are you in there? Open the door. Cam, please, please, open the door, Cameron. Come on, Cam.
Good to have you back. Rudy Giuliani asked a judge yesterday to rule in his favor or grant a new trial in a lawsuit brought by 2 Georgia election workers.
He was ordered to pay $148 million for falsely accusing them of election fraud.
A federal jury in Washington ordered Giuliani to pay the 2 workers for reputational and emotional harm. They found he falsely claimed they rigged votes against former President Trump.
The former New York mayor filed the motion after declaring bankruptcy. The bankruptcy judge gave him permission to challenge the damages as long as he funded it with donations instead of his own funds.
Other lawsuits against Giuliani have been paused because of the bankruptcy proceedings. He was a leading member in Trump's legal team that sought to challenge 2020 election results.
The jury handed down the defamation verdict in December after testimony from the election workers. They alleged they received racist threats after Giuliani accused them of improperly counting ballots. New York State Attorney General Letitia James had some strong words yesterday on the fraud trial ruling against former President Donald Trump. James says she's prepared to seize Trump's assets, including his skyscrapers, if he's unable to find the cash to pay off the over $350 million fine. A New York judge last week ordered Trump to pay the fine after ruling that he committed repeated and persistent fraud. The judge said the former president overstated his net worth to obtain better loan terms. Trump denies all wrongdoing and is appealing the fine. He has accused James of bias. Trump's appeal of the judgment may focus on his argument that there were no actual victims from the alleged conduct in the case.
More than $2 million in legal bills. That's what former President Trump's leadership PAC paid out last month.
The Political Action Committee Save America paid the largest amount of nearly $600,000 to the law firm of John Lauro.
Lauro is representing the former president in the federal election case brought by special counsel Jack Smith.
Last year alone, Save America spent more than $55 million on legal bills. That accounts for nearly 85% of its spending.
Trump racked up an additional $1.9 million in unpaid legal bills at the end of January.
That's according to a filing last night with federal regulators.
President Biden reaching into the pockets of some of his wealthiest donors as his ability to run continues to raise questions.
And former President Trump touting a fast-approaching GOP victory despite Nikki Haley refusing to drop out. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
Despite polling showing President Biden with an underwater approval rating, his ability to raise money has been actually quite good. On Tuesday, his campaign touted having raised over $42 million in January alone, and that's adding to his fundraising edge over Trump. And this week, Biden's holding more fundraisers in some of the wealthiest parts of the country, namely in Silicon Valley and Hollywood. But as he was heading out to California on Tuesday, he was again faced with a question about his age and his ability to keep running as president. Watch.
Going to California, is this about coming up with a plan B for 2024? Does Gavin need to stand by?
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm looking at you. We're looking at you.
Well, we're not exactly sure what that means, but Governor Gavin Newsom on Tuesday got a very similar question. Here's how he responded. Watch.
If for whatever reason Biden won't be available for presidency, will you be interested to join the ticket?
No, it's President Biden's coming out to California tonight. He'll be in the Bay Area tomorrow, and I hope to be invited to his inaugurals for his second term as president of the United States.
Right.
Meanwhile, Nikki Haley's questioning the age of both Biden and Trump while vowing to stay in the race.
That's why I refuse to quit. South Carolina will vote on Saturday, but on Sunday, I'll still be running for president. I'm not going anywhere.
And Trump's campaign on Tuesday called Nikki Haley a wailing loser, adding that Trump will secure the GOP nomination in just a few weeks. And President Biden, meanwhile, said on Tuesday that he doesn't care if he's going to face off with Trump or Haley this November. Reporting from the White House, Iris Howe, NTD News.
Now for some insight into the paths to victory and what the voter metrics can tell us surrounding the South Carolina Republican primary Saturday is Lawrence Wilson, a political reporter for the Epoch Times. Thank you for your time this morning, Lawrence. We know that Haley is trailing in the polls in her home state, but will we be able to make any inferences on future primaries and the general election based on voter metrics Saturday?
Well, it's possible that we could. For example, in New Hampshire, Haley was trailing by about the same percentage as in this race, but she wound up exceeding expectations by about 9 points. So that may show whether independents have a strong preference for Haley. We know that some independents and some Democrats even have said they're going to cross over and vote in the Republican primary in South Carolina so they can vote for Haley against Trump. South Carolina has an open primary, so you don't have to be registered with the party in order to do that. So that's one thing we could see from this is how strong the movement is to, well, stop Trump, I guess you would say. Is it growing? Is it about the same, or is it trailing off?
Very interesting, Lawrence. Does Haley have a path to victory in the Palmetto State? Would it take a great deal of that crossover voting that you were referencing to help her cross the finish line ahead of Trump?
Yeah, experts say no. Party leaders say no on both sides. Experts are saying no. The gap is just too great. This could be a bump of a few percentage points. It's certainly not going to close a 30-plus percentage point gap. So Haley is widely expected to lose to Donald Trump by a significant margin on Saturday. This probably won't affect the outcome of the race, but it could tell something about how the electorate is feeling.
And let's talk about the electorate. There's the demographic of Black Americans that Trump has courted in this election cycle. Will the results in South Carolina give us an indication of whether or not that demographic has support for Trump?
Well, it could. There have been a couple of polls recently that suggest that a good number of Black Americans intend to vote for Donald Trump. Now, those are polls. That's different from going to the polls and actually casting a ballot. This will be a good chance in a state that has a large percentage Black population to test that theory. President Trump will be at an event headlining at a Black conservative event in Columbia, South Carolina on Friday night, the day before this primary election. So he certainly has that in mind. And we'll see what the exit polling shows us about the Black vote in this South Carolina primary.
Yes, a lot to look into here with this data. And the Black vote has been a little bit better off for Trump, according to some measures, with 17% indicating that they do support the former president. Regardless of the outcome here in South Carolina, Haley has pledged to press on with her campaign, eyeing wins on Super Tuesday. How well does she need to do there to stay viable?
Well, I don't know that she could possibly do well enough to make it seem like she has an actual pathway to victory in this primary. If the polling is accurate, and it has been so far, President Trump will probably clinch the number of delegates needed. Remember, it's not just the popular vote, it's delegates to the convention in July, but he'll probably clinch that number of delegates sometime in early March, effectively handing him the nomination. Haley says she's not running for vice president. She's not setting herself up for a 2028 run. She just wants to give the people a choice in this race. We'll see how long that lasts after South Carolina and certainly after Super Tuesday.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your insight with us. Lawrence Wilson, political reporter for the Epoch Times.
Thank you.
And with the South Carolina Republican primary coming up this weekend, NTD News will be covering all the action. We'll have a lot prepared for you, including special guests, on-the-ground coverage, and the Data Hub. Join Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer on The Nation Decides 2024 live this Saturday, February 24th at 6 p.m. And coming up, the House Judiciary Committee issuing a subpoena to a top Biden administration official. Lawmakers want more information on illegal minors who've committed violent crimes.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing a Catholic nonprofit that he claims is encouraging illegal immigration through its shelters.
A wrongful death suit against a fertility clinic leads a state Supreme Court to protect embryos as children. That and more when we return.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
Three of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
What was the process of actually putting this all together?
Many hours of finding the right camera angles and watching it. The first trouble started just after 1 o'clock.
45 pages, here it is right here. Donald Trump has been indicted.
Somber day for the country.
This all happened before President Trump's speech was over.
The founder of the Oath Keepers militia group is headed to prison for more than 18 years.
His lawyers didn't have this video. The video we're watching right now, his own lawyers did not have. There was a big question of what did the people do who actually did enter the building.
This is where we picked it up with the security footage that is new. At this point, the story dramatically changes.
The New Jersey man who assaulted a Capitol police officer on January 6th has been sentenced.
So this was withheld.
This was not shown to the defense.
That could be considered exculpatory evidence. This doesn't seem like what a lot of the media is showing.
It's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is. What we're after is the truth.
I'm Jack Bradley in Florida, and we are NTD News.
Good to have you back. A showdown over the case files of unaccompanied alien children.
House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan has subpoenaed Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra. And today's Daniel Monahan has more on the case where the House Judiciary Committee is accusing the HHS of stonewalling their requests to see important documents.
The House Judiciary Committee is conducting oversight of what it sees as HHS's mismanagement of the placement of unaccompanied alien children. It says unvetted minors have committed heinous criminal acts against Americans. The committee says it has asked HHS for files on these cases, but calls the agency's response woefully inadequate. The committee shared some examples of crimes committed on X, writing, "A 15-year-old boy was murdered in Frederick, Maryland by alleged MS-13 gang members who entered the U.S. illegally. Why doesn't HHS want the committee to know whether these illegal aliens had gang tattoos before they were released?" And in another post it wrote, "An illegal alien who was released by HHS to a sponsor was charged with assaulting and murdering Maria Gonzalez just weeks before her 11th birthday. Why is HHS obstructing the committee's investigation into this criminal illegal alien? The girl was allegedly sexually assaulted and strangled to death. The committee says it's been asking HHS since June 2023 for specific files on the unaccompanied alien minors who've been charged with crimes like theft, brutal assault, and murder. It says HHS responded in September, but gave reasons like privacy concerns for not sharing the files. The committee says after repeated follow-ups and requests, HHS offered in November to allow some in-camera review of documents. That is, if the committee agreed not to photograph or otherwise record any documents. In-camera review means the review of records privately in a judge's chamber or in a courtroom. While reviewing the documents, committee staff found that HHS had blacked out large sections of the documents. The department said the redactions covered personal identifying information and personal health information. The committee says HHS blacked out information about whether specific minors had identifying scars, marks, or tattoos, information that it says can be indicative of gang affiliation. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And on Capitol Hill, Republican senators yesterday pressed for a full impeachment trial of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. NTD's Luis Martinez has the details.
Senator Rick Scott from Florida sent a letter to Vice President Kamala Harris this Tuesday, encouraging her to fulfill her constitutional duty and serve over as presiding officer during the upcoming proceedings of the impeachment of Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. In the letter, Scott said Harris should be keenly interested in whether a high-ranking member of her administration is part of the root causes of the border crisis. He noted the vice president was appointed border czar by President Biden in 2021. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has already announced that the Senate's pro tempore president, Senator Patty Murray, will preside over the trial. In a separate letter, Republican Senators Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, urged Minority Leader Mitch McConnell to join them in ensuring the Senate Democrats allow for a full trial. They warned that Democrats could try to dismiss the impeachment charges, something the Senate has never done before. The Senate returns from a recess on the 26th of February. The Republican-appointed impeachment managers will then deliver the 2 articles of impeachment against Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Reporting from the U.S. Senate, Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem ordered National Guard troops to deploy to the southern border.
In a statement yesterday, she said, quote, "The border is a war zone, so we're sending soldiers."
Noem said 60 of the state's National Guard soldiers will deploy to the U.S.-Mexico border later this spring. The deployment is on a rolling basis for a 3-month period. She said their primary mission will be construction of a wall to stem the flow of illegal immigrants, drug cartels, and human trafficking into the U.S.
This deployment will be South Dakota's 5th since Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a call for help in combating the growing border crisis. U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded 2.5 million encounters at the border last year.
And Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced yesterday that he's suing a Catholic NGO.
He's accusing the nonprofit of encouraging illegal immigration and is seeking to remove its license.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said Tuesday that he's seeking to end Annunciation House's operations in the Lone Star State. In a post on X, Paxton claimed NGOs are using taxpayer money to facilitate human smuggling across the border, and his lawsuit aims to hold these organizations responsible for worsening illegal immigration. Operating in El Paso, Catholic nonprofit Annunciation House describes itself as a home to thousands of refugees and migrant poor. The organization was started in the 1970s by a group of young adults. Since then, the organization has expanded into a network of shelters across El Paso. They say they provide assistance to newly arrived border crossers. That includes food, shelter, and legal and medical services. But Paxton's lawsuit claims the actual operations of Annunciation House are quite different. The lawsuit alleges the organization appears to be openly violating many provisions of law. These include allowing illegal immigrants to elude examination from immigration officers, encouraging migrants to enter the country by concealing or harboring them, and transporting them in a manner equivalent to human smuggling. Annunciation House responded to the Attorney General's actions by calling a press conference on Friday, February 24th. They called Paxton's position illegal, immoral, and anti-faith, and said the organization's work is central to El Paso. NTD reached out to Annunciation House for comment, but didn't receive a response before airtime.
And the Alabama Supreme Court ruled last week that frozen embryos can be considered children under state law.
The court says they're entitled to the same legal rights as other unborn children.
In the majority 7-2 ruling, Justice Jay Mitchell wrote unborn children are children without exception based on developmental stage, physical location, or any other ancillary characteristics.
The decision was issued in response to wrongful death suits brought against a fertility clinic in Mobile, Alabama in 2021. This after a patient broke into an IVF freezer and dropped a number of trays.
The ruling allows 3 couples to sue the facility for wrongful death. Over in Missouri, 2 adults have been charged in connection with the deadly shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade. 18-year-old Dominic Miller and 22-year-old Lindell Mays both face second-degree murder and other firearm-related charges. Here's the Jackson County prosecutor speaking on Tuesday.
From the evidence, it appears that defendant Mays, that's the first person I read off charges on, defendant Mays was in a verbal argument with another individual. Mays pulled his handgun first. Almost immediately, others pulled their firearms.
The new charges come after 2 teenagers were detained last week for resisting arrest and the use of firearm. Officials say there could be more charges as the investigation continues. The February 14th shooting resulted in 1 death and 22 injuries. Both defendants are being held on a $1 million bond. And a mother of 6 and popular YouTube personality was sentenced yesterday to 4 consecutive sentences of 1 to 15 years in a Utah prison.
Ruby Franke and her former business partner Jody Hildebrandt pleaded guilty last year to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
Well, their sentences could range from 4 to 60 years. Utah law puts a cap of 30 years on consecutive sentences. The Utah Board of Pardons and Parole will consider their behavior while imprisoned, then decide how much of that time each will spend behind bars.
While Franke has shown remorse and cooperated with attorneys, a state prosecutor said Hildebrandt has not. She continues to place blame on the children. Ruby Franke's husband has filed for divorce. Franke and Hildebrandt have 30 days to appeal their sentences. And up next, Capital One is making a $35 billion bet that Americans will continue to rely on their credit cards. If approved, the company's acquisition of Discover will create the biggest U.S. credit card company by loan volume. What this means for consumers with NTD's business host, Don Ma.
The price of becoming a U.S. citizen is going up. How much more can applicants expect to pay? We ask Don Ma, host of NTD Business, when we come back.
我们师傅讲过，过去武术的身法，你上阵的，你要是身法你保持好了，你就失去了生命。
Are today's mainstream martial arts not traditional martial arts?
现在有些人他学说传统武术，他尤其是西方人，他不懂。为什么我们要举行大赛呢？因为新唐人他就是要提倡传统武术，复兴中华5000年的传统文化。传统武术，真正的传统武术是讲武德的。我相信有一点。 就是守住武德，就有人教。
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed. A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end and life is renewed once again.
It's a magical painting.
Thanks for staying with us, everyone. And joining us now is NTD Business host Don Ma to give us the latest updates from the financial world.
So Don, let's hear your update.
Okay, so a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about, and one of them is Capital One's deal with Discover potentially, and as well as a quick update on Walmart announcing yesterday that it's wanting to buy Vizio, the TV maker. So let's start off with Capital One. What I wanted to specifically talk to you guys about is the deal and what it could potentially mean for consumers, like people, you and me. So first of all, if this deal is approved by regulators and shareholders, Capital One's acquisition will create the biggest U.S. credit card company by volume. Essentially, the company is betting that its credit cards are in more people's wallets. It's spending a lot of money to make that bet. So at the moment, we're still a long way off from the deal actually being finalized, given that the deal isn't expected to be complete until late 2024 or early 2025. So that means Discover and Capital One customers, as of right now, won't see any immediate changes, but there's also the possibility that regulators could push the deadline even further out. So for a while, I think we're not going to see much.
Right. A lot of regulatory scrutiny they'll have to face first, but what about years down the road then? What changes could we see there?
Sure. So if we're looking down the road, to start off, Capital One is going to switch from MasterCard to the Discover network within the first few years. And this is according to the CEO in an earnings call yesterday. So the end goal here is to get more merchants to take Discover, and that's beneficial for consumers because it means they can use their Discover cards in more places and also likely earn more rewards from those purchases. Now, all this hinges on the fact that the deal is approved by regulators, but it seems like actually this deal could be well positioned for approval, actually, because some lawmakers have accused Visa and MasterCard of having a duopoly. So Capital One's deal could create actually new competition for MasterCard and Visa. And some regulators would like to see that. More competition is always good for consumers. So the combination of Capital One and Discover would create the biggest U.S. credit card issuer with around $250 billion in credit card balance.
Right, and Don, well, since the larger credit card companies usually charge a higher rate than these smaller ones, experts are now warning that this merger could put the squeeze on card borrowers. But in other news, Walmart, there's another buyout there. What can you tell us there?
Yeah. So Walmart announced this yesterday. It appears that it doesn't want to only sell groceries, which is what it's known for, Walmart. It also wants to be a media and advertising giant like Amazon. So Walmart wants to buy TV maker Vizio for $2.3 billion. And this is to shore up its advertising business to become a stronger rival to the likes of Amazon's ad business. And Walmart currently sells ads at physical stores and its website. So by acquiring Vizio, Walmart can now actually sell ads through streaming services on television. So Walmart believes it can add revenue by offering brands the opportunity to advertise on Vizio televisions. And Walmart seems like wants a bigger slice of brands' advertising spending to supplement its primarily low margin, actually, retail business. So groceries make up more than half of its business, but its margins, profit margins actually is quite small on that front. So owning Vizio not only gives Walmart viewership data from thousands of smart TVs, but also gives it access to Vizio's SmartCast operating system, which streams ad-supported content on its devices. So that business generated about $600 million in revenue in 2023, according to some analysts. So,
wow, yeah, definitely a boost to that profit margin. And it feels like that shift to tech has been a long time coming with them making investments here and there. And last year, they even actually took some of Amazon Prime Day's market share, which was interesting. So interesting to see how that plays out, if they could actually keep up. So, but let's move away from big tech for a moment. What else do you have for us?
Yeah, something about citizenship, U.S. citizenship, actually. So people applying for American citizenship can expect higher fees for the process. Starting April 1st, the cost of the application to naturalize will climb to about 19%. The cost of a green card, the first step to citizenship, will jump as well. The naturalization application form is called an N400. It costs $640 for the paper application, or $725 for the fingerprint fee. Now, the cost of both will now jump to $760 on April 1st. Just a quick update on that.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Don Ma, host of NTD Business.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. And stay with us. Keeping your brain engaged with music could help prevent mental decline. How playing an instrument or singing can benefit brain health when we come back.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. Build a truly positive and interactive classroom community. Foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man, because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
These are all farmers. Maybe
no,
not
there's
this
not a
one.
farm anymore.
But here's a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food. So we don't eat meat, but we eat insects.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore. So, all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
Welcome back. There is an ancient Chinese saying that harmonious music is like medicine. It's healing.
That's right. And now modern researchers are finding that engaging with music, like playing an instrument or singing, can be beneficial for brain health.
I spoke with Brian Levy, the Director of Marketing and Business Development at Cambridge Caregivers, about how music therapy can help the elderly by keeping their brain youthful, so to speak, by preventing what he calls brain change. Here's what he said. First, let's talk about brain change, and could you start by defining what that is?
Great, thanks for having me. So brain change is somebody typically in our elder community who is experiencing a decline, and that happens in the brain, in the mind, where they've been diagnosed or not with some kind of brain change, i.e. dementia, it could be Alzheimer's, etc., where their short-term memory is actually shrinking. I have residents and clients that have a memory of 6 seconds.
So tell me more about the changes that you see, let's say, before musical therapy and after.
Literally have residents and clients that just, they're not engaging. They're not reacting. They can't communicate well or at all. And then bring in a music therapist, or even turning on, I have a resident with an Alexa, and she's completely nonverbal and really doesn't react much to people. But put on some Frank Sinatra and, she'll move her body, move her head, kind of tap along with her hand, and oftentimes even mouth some of the words and lyrics to the songs.
What is it about playing an instrument or singing that has this effect on our brain?
Sure, it's just a very soothing way. It's actually very therapeutic. It's kind of like it's a different way of communicating. People communicate with music, and they can relate, and it's very relaxing and very soothing. It's like meditation.
So tell me more about, because you were mentioning that you had this podcast, so tell me more about the benefits that you came across while doing research. What are the benefits of musical therapy apart from brain change?
Sure. I mean, socialization, you're basically interacting with a musician, keeping the beat. It's very soothing. It's very engaging. Like I said, it's meditative, and it triggers a part of the brain that is not used, because when you have brain change, you have no short-term memory at all. I mean, like I mentioned before, it could be 6 seconds, it could be 4 seconds, but you don't have much memory in terms of what just happened, but you can remember 40 years ago. And so you're essentially triggering a part of the brain that's not being used as you're declining with brain change.
All right. Thank you so much for these insights. Brian Levy, I really appreciate your time this morning.
Nice being with you. Thank you.
All right, that was Brian Levy with Cambridge Caregivers and Manchester Care Homes. I think the most important thing is to choose the right music. Studies have also shown that certain kinds of music can negatively impact the mental well-being of young people. So when in doubt, choose wholesome, uplifting tunes.
That's why I choose Mozart and Beethoven. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, good choice right there. All right, just stay with us for a couple more seconds and we will kick off the second part of our broadcast.
NTD News, the fastest growing independent news source in America, bringing you breaking news from around the world. Expert analysis, investigative reporting, and original award-winning documentaries. We're known for our uncensored China coverage you won't find anywhere else. We cover the stories that affect you and shape our world without the political noise. We report from the heart with you in mind. Watch us right here on NTD News.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD
Good morning. Here are our top stories. The U.S. and Russia set to deliver arguments today as the top UN court hears arguments over Israel's territorial claims, and more on the U.S. veto of a security resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
President Biden will impose new sanctions on Russia. That's over the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny and the war in Ukraine.
The former FBI informant charged with falsely accusing the president and his son of corruption allegedly got his information from Russian intelligence. That's according to prosecutors. The details of a new court filing.
Candidate Nikki Haley trailing in the polls ahead of Saturday's South Carolina primary. Does she have any path to victory? Our guest weighs in.
Illegal immigrant minors accused of heinous crimes like murder and brutal assault. The House Judiciary Committee is demanding their case files, but the Department of Health and Human Services is citing privacy concerns.
Concerns rising over billionaire George Soros' buyout of hundreds of radio stations. Critics say the move could be an effort to influence public opinion ahead of the general election. An advocate shares his insight.
And Tokyo residents enjoying the recent warm weather and early blooming cherry blossoms, but the unseasonable temperatures won't last long.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome. Today is Wednesday, February 21st. Today's top news: the U.S. proposed a United Nations Security Council draft resolution yesterday calling for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza.
The draft resolution calls for the release of all hostages and warns against an Israeli ground offensive into Rafah. The draft says that would result in further harm to civilians and have serious implications for regional peace and security.
Meanwhile, the United Nations top court is hearing arguments from over 50 countries over Israel's territorial claims on disputed land sought for a Palestinian state. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the latest in the Israel-Hamas war.
6 days of hearings at The Hague are underway over the legality of Israel's territorial claims. The case focuses on Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank. The U.S. and Russia present arguments Wednesday, along with Egypt and France. Israel captured the area from Jordan and Egypt in the 1967 war. Palestinians want all three for an independent state. Israel considers the West Bank to be disputed territory, to be decided in negotiations. The Jewish state will not speak in this week's hearings, but stated the court's involvement could be harmful to negotiating a settlement. Washington in 2022 opposed the court issuing an opinion on the matter and is expected to argue it cannot rule. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu Tuesday stated Israel is not prepared to pay any price in a deal to free hostages, and certainly not the delusional prices Hamas demands. He declared Israel is committed to continuing the war until it achieves all of its goals, eliminating Hamas, releasing all hostages, and ensuring that Gaza never threatens Israel again.
Then there is no pressure, none, that can change this.
The U.S. on Tuesday vetoed a United Nations resolution that demanded an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The vote in the 15-member Security Council was 13-1. The UK abstained. That marks the third U.S. veto of a Security Council resolution on a ceasefire demand. NSC spokesman John Kirby explained the U.S. position after the vote.
We just weren't able to support a resolution today that was going to put sensitive negotiations in peril. And that's what we believe this resolution would do.
Kirby says Middle East envoy Brett McGurk will visit Egypt Wednesday and be in Israel Thursday. That's for ongoing talks with Qatar on a temporary ceasefire hostage release deal. Over 100 hostages are still being held by Hamas after the terrorist group abducted over 250 people in its October 7th attack on Israel. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
For an update on the war in Gaza, we bring in Jonathan Tobin, the editor-in-chief for the Jewish News Syndicate. Good morning, Jonathan. Good to see you. So first, could you give us an update on the progress of the war, especially now with some reports and analysts actually coming out saying that the war might end in the foreseeable future?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on. As for the war ending, I'm cautious about stating when it will end or about the foreseeable future. It will end. And the point being, the reason why there has been this flurry of diplomatic activity is that because Israel is making real progress towards finishing the war. Hamas has been backed into its last major enclave in Gaza, in Rafah. Its capabilities of fighting have been reduced markedly. Its ability to shoot missiles into Israel, we has shot over 15,000 missiles during and after the October 7th massacres. That has been reduced. Hamas is on its last legs. And so that is why those who don't want Israel to actually win the war and to eliminate the terrorist threat from Hamas are trying to stop the war before that victory occurs. And that is something that Israel's people, I just came back from an extended stay there and covering the war. That is something that I think the vast majority, the overwhelming majority, including many who don't back Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, will not accept. They will not accept a situation in Gaza where Hamas is allowed to survive this war. And if it survives it, it will declare itself the victor, and it will be rightly be seen as the victor because it then will have gotten away with mass murder and will be able to make good on its pledges to repeat the October 7th massacre again and again. That's something that Israel simply isn't going to allow.
Okay, so let's talk about the role of and the impact that UN could have on all of this, because the US just vetoed a resolution from Algeria, as we know, and proposed one themselves, as we also have heard earlier in the show, that for the first time involved language like, words of like ceasefire. So if the UN would be able to pass that, what would that change for Israel in the war, and would it impact Israel in the war?
Well, certainly a UN Security Council ceasefire resolution would put Israel under tremendous pressure to stop its campaign of self-defense. The United States has always prevented such measures from being passed in the UN Security Council. I would say that the U.S. proposal is troubling because it raises the possibility. It's clearly meant as leverage over Netanyahu to try to make him stop the campaign, not so much because this administration thinks that Hamas should survive, but this is for political reasons. Biden is under tremendous pressure from the left wing of the Democratic Party, his intersectional activist left wing, which, quite frankly, is at war with him. There's a civil, an ongoing revolt within the administration, the Biden campaign, and the Democratic Party in general, from people who are against Israel. They are the minority of the American people. The majority of the American people support Israel. And I would say that Biden is foolish if he thinks that there are more votes to be lost among left-wingers and anti-Semites than among centrist pro-Israel Americans.
Right.
But that is the direction he's trending.
Elections this year certainly playing a role as well. So, but before we go, just quickly, I would also like to ask about what an independent Saudi newspaper reported that the JNS also touched on. So it cited security sources and says Sinwar has fled to Egypt. What do you know about this?
Well, those are the reports. I don't know that it's confirmed. Obviously, Sinwar, if it indicates the seriousness of Hamas's predicament in Gaza, they know that it's only a matter of time unless someone from the international community saves them, whether it's Biden or the UN, before they are completely defeated, as they should be. They are the moral equivalent of the Nazis in 2024. So obviously he's looking for an escape route, as are no doubt other Hamas cadres. Most of the Hamas leadership is safe in Qatar, but he's there. And obviously he doesn't wish to be captured. He doesn't wish to be killed. He's happy to let other Palestinians die. He's happy to let the whole Palestinian population die. And that's been shown by his ruthless willingness to use them as civilian, as human shields, as well as to launch a war that destroyed them. It's not clear whether he's gone, but I'm sure he's thinking about it.
Right. But as of now, just rumors. So thank you so much, Jonathan Tobin. I appreciate your insights on this.
Thank you.
And President Biden told reporters yesterday he intends to impose new major sanctions on Russia.
I told you we'd be announcing sanctions on Russia. We'll have a major package announced on Friday.
The White House said the new sanctions are to hold Russia accountable for the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny and the war in Ukraine. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said yesterday the sanctions package will cover elements of the Russian defense industrial base and revenue sources for the Russian economy. The Kremlin has denied involvement in Navalny's death. And a former FBI informant who made corruption claims about President Biden and Hunter Biden said he got information from officials associated with Russian intelligence. That's according to a court filing by prosecutors yesterday.
NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the case against Alexander Smirnov.
Prosecutors in a court filing Tuesday said former FBI informant Alexander Smirnov claimed to have extensive and extremely recent contacts with Russian spies. They say he admitted officials associated with Russian intelligence were involved in passing a story about Hunter Biden, and that Smirnov had planned to meet with one official during an upcoming overseas trip. But prosecutors with special counsel David Weiss's team did not reveal which story about Hunter Biden Smirnov allegedly got from the individuals. Smirnov is accused of falsely telling his handler that a Ukrainian energy company paid Hunter and Joe Biden $5 million each around 2015. This claim became central to the Republican impeachment inquiry against the president in Congress. He allegedly told the FBI in September that Hunter Biden was making phone calls in a hotel that was bugged in Kyiv, Ukraine. He says Russian intelligence officers would use the hotel to gather compromising information. Federal agents have rejected this claim. The court paper stated evidence against Smirnov was strong. Prosecutors have requested Smirnov, a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen, be detained until trial, arguing he can get a new passport from the Israeli embassy and leave the country. For now, a judge has allowed Smirnov to be released on electric monitoring. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
A showdown over the case files of unaccompanied alien children. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan has subpoenaed Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the case, where the House Judiciary Committee is accusing the HHS of stonewalling their requests to see important documents.
The House Judiciary Committee is conducting oversight of what it sees as HHS's mismanagement of the placement of unaccompanied alien children. It says unvetted minors have committed heinous criminal acts against Americans. The committee says it has asked HHS for files on these cases, but calls the agency's response woefully inadequate. The committee says it's been asking HHS since June 2023 for specific files on the unaccompanied alien minors who've been charged with crimes like theft, brutal assault, and murder. It says HHS responded in September, but gave reasons like privacy concerns for not sharing the files. The committee says after repeated follow-ups and requests, HHS offered in November to allow some in-camera review of documents. That is, if the committee agreed not to photograph or otherwise record any documents. In-camera review means the review of records privately in a judge's chamber or in a courtroom. While reviewing the documents, committee staff found that HHS had blacked out large sections of the documents. The department said the redactions covered personal identifying information and personal health information. The committee says HHS blacked out information about whether specific minors had identifying scars, marks, or tattoos, information that it says can be indicative of gang affiliation. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, Nikki Haley trailing in the polls. Does she have any path to victory? What will the polling numbers show for future primaries and the general election?
Billionaire George Soros, known for supporting progressive prosecutors, has acquired over 200 radio stations. What are the concerns, and is the timing suspect with an election coming up? An advocate shares his take.
Tokyo is enjoying a period of warm weather, not to mention world-famous cherry blossoms. But will spring temperatures last long? Find out after the break.
Art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
What do you do when your tire goes flat and there's no air anywhere? You reach for Bullseye Pro, the smarter, faster, hands-free way to fill it up with air. Bullseye Pro is equipped with a rechargeable lithium-ion power plant. So fast and so convenient. It's like the power of an air compressor in the palm of your hand. Look, you can inflate all 4 tires on a single charge. It has a built-in smart pressure digital sensor that gauges and automatically stops when the set tire pressure is reached. Easily inflate pool toys, exercise balls, and more. Call or go online now and get the complete Bullseye Pro inflation system for the factory direct price of just $79.99. Plus, we'll ship your entire order free, and we'll give you a 50% discount on a second one. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-984-7221. That's 1-800-984-7221, or go to getbullseyepro.com.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
3 of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Okay. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Good morning again. And more than $2 million in legal bills. That's what former President Trump's leadership PAC paid out last month.
The Political Action Committee Save America paid the largest amount of nearly $600,000 to the law firm of John Lauro.
Lauro is representing the former president in the federal election case brought by special counsel Jack Smith.
Last year alone, Save America spent more than $55 million on legal bills. That accounts for nearly 85% of its spending.
Trump racked up an additional $1.9 million in unpaid legal bills at the end of January.
That's according to a filing last night with federal regulators. And earlier I spoke to Lawrence Wilson, a political reporter for the Epoch Times. I asked him for some insight into the paths to victory and what voter metrics can tell us about this weekend's primary.
In New Hampshire, Haley was trailing by about the same percentage as in this race, but she wound up exceeding expectations by about 9 points. So that may show whether independents have a strong preference for Haley. We know that some independents and some Democrats even have said they're going to cross over and vote in the Republican primary in South Carolina so they can vote for Haley against Trump. South Carolina has an open primary, so you don't have to be registered with the party in order to do that. So that's one thing we could see from this is how strong the movement is to, well, stop Trump, I guess you would say. Is it growing? Is it about the same, or is it trailing off?
Very interesting, Lawrence. Does Haley have a path to victory in the Palmetto State? Would it take a great deal of that crossover voting that you were referencing to help her cross the finish line ahead of Trump?
Yeah, experts say no. Party leaders say no on both sides. Experts are saying no. The gap is just too great. This could be a bump of a few percentage points. It's certainly not going to close a 30+ percentage point gap. So Haley is widely expected to lose to Donald Trump by a significant margin on Saturday. This probably won't affect the outcome of the race, but it could tell something about how the electorate is feeling.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your insight with us. Lawrence Wilson, political reporter for the Epoch Times.
Thank you.
With the South Carolina Republican primary coming up this weekend, NTD News will be covering all the action. We'll have a lot prepared for you, including special guests, on-the-ground coverage, and the Data Hub. Join Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer on The Nation Decides 2024 live this Saturday, February 24th at 6 p.m. New York State Attorney General Letitia James had some strong words yesterday on the fraud trial ruling against former President Donald Trump. James says she's prepared to seize Trump's assets, including his skyscrapers, if he's unable to find the cash to pay off the over $350 million fine. A New York judge last week ordered Trump to pay the fine after ruling that he committed repeated and persistent fraud. The judge said the former president overstated his net worth to obtain better loan terms. Trump denies all wrongdoing and is appealing the fine. He has accused James of bias. Trump's appeal of the judgment may focus on his argument that there were no actual victims from the alleged conduct in the case.
And billionaire George Soros has acquired 220 U.S. radio stations. He did so through his purchase of $400 million of debt held by the Audacity chain.
We look into some of the concerns surrounding this with Jason Johnson, the president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund.
By acquiring a significant number of radio stations, which are media organizations, there's the opportunity for Soros and his interests to really put out that very, very progressive worldview right in the immediately preceding a national election. And so the concern is that the information that could be disseminated through these through his airwaves could be false, misleading, otherwise encourage voters to support candidates with that really progressive view.
What are the risks to Soros' buyout here, given that his desire to reshape the justice system has been very pronounced?
Yeah, so Soros and his various interests have really found a way to stretch the dollar in terms of supporting candidates directly, supporting PACs, and other things to be able to really what he's been able to do is install, we estimate, about 70 progressive prosecutors across the country that have all adopted this essentially a singular model for quote-unquote criminal justice reform, which means being soft on criminals, adopting whole categories of crime that are not to be prosecuted, steering even violent criminals away from incarceration, acting generally more like public defenders than like prosecutors. And so he's very clearly done that over the past number of years. He's been very successful at doing that. And I think that maybe this acquisition of news stations, radio stations, is just the next step in that evolution.
So, Jason, we've established that there certainly are risks that could come with this acquisition. Are there any ways to counter it?
Well, I think the most important thing, and this is what we stress in our work when we identify and highlight the problem with progressive prosecutors, is just bringing more public awareness so that the average voter is more well-informed and understands where their information is coming from and can digest the information a little bit different, understanding, the viewpoint of the news organization that's putting it out. I think that's half the battle. We try to bring a lot of attention to the progressive prosecutor concern directly because we want voters as they go in to realize these are important positions. They're locally elected prosecutors. And so I think information is half the battle. But I also think, to the extent that there are billionaires on the other side of the issue, maybe we have some billionaires that could counter sort of the Soros effect by using their money in a way that brings greater awareness to the other side of the issue, not just the progressive view.
Yes, knowing a media's backstory is very important. Jason Johnson, president of the Law Enforcement Legal and Defense Fund, thank you.
Thank you.
A United Airlines plane made an emergency landing in Denver Monday due to an issue with the wing.
The flight was headed to Boston from San Francisco when the incident occurred.
A passenger's cell phone video showed damage to the part of the wing known as the slat. Slats are movable panels on the front or leading edge of the wing used during takeoffs and landings. United did not say what caused the damage to the plane's wing.
The Boeing 757-200 with 165 passengers aboard landed in Denver safely. Passengers were put on a different plane and flown to Boston as originally planned. The Federal Aviation Administration said it's investigating the incident. I wonder how that happened.
Yeah, but also I feel like maybe that's not just going through my head, but another Boeing.
Right.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Tokyo had unusually warm weather yesterday. Japan's weather agency recorded a high of 75 degrees in the Japanese capital.
The unseasonably warm weather encouraged many to take off their outer layers as they snapped photos of early cherry blossoms and ate ice cream.
It's pretty warm for this time of year. It's a bit unusual that the weather is warm enough for me to feel a bit sweaty.
People in Tokyo should enjoy the brief spell of warm weather while it lasts, though.
Temperatures in the city are forecast to plunge rapidly later this week. The Japanese weather agency expects lows of 37 degrees by the weekend.
Certainly beautiful, though, those flowers.
Oh yeah, always great this time of year, and when that's a nice little relief from the winter.
Exactly. All right, we have to wrap up our show right here, but we'll keep you updated with the latest information. Stay tuned for our News Today broadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.